All right, it's 12 p.m., so we're going to go ahead and get started. I know there's some stragglers who are coming in. Can everyone hear me okay? If you can't, type something in the chat. I don't know what I would do about it because every microphone I brought with me, like literally, see, I got this microphone, I got a bunch of others, aren't working, so you're stuck with my AirPods. All right, so we're here for estate planning for Catholics, and if you are looking for estate planning for Jehovah's Witnesses, that is in room 503, and we will be doing that at 1:30. With me is Father Pat Kirsch. Say hi, Father Pat.
Hi.
You're on camera.
Thank you.
And we're going to be talking about estate planning for Catholics today. It's going to be kind of a blend of, if you've been to another webinar of mine, we talk about the law, we talk about what I do, those kinds of things. This is going to be narrowly tailored to those types of considerations that you would have for Catholics. And so let's get to exactly what we'll be doing. So we're going to do a little bit of business and talk about why estate plans fail and two ways to think about estate planning, because that's going to provide a basis for everyone here to think about what estate planning is and what you should be thinking about, because then when we get to what the church talks about or what the church is thinking about estate planning, it'll make a little bit sense, it'll provide a little more context. And then we're going to talk about really how a Catholic fulfills your obligations to family. We're going to talk about responsible stewardship, creation of a moral legacy, what the church teaches about death and dying, and what to know about your Catholic funeral. And Father Pat is here to rein me in case my theology gets too liberal or conservative or, you know, whatever label you want to put onto it. Okay, so let's get started with who I am. I'm an estate planning attorney. I've been doing this for 10 years. Before becoming a lawyer, I was an expert for the Vatican at the United Nations, which was a really fantastic experience. And I founded and started my own estate planning law firm called Regnum Legacy. And oh yeah, I was the Client's Choice Award 2020 for AVO, which is a lawyer rating website. And Regnum Legacy, this is the other guy. Who's this guy? Father Pat Kirsch. This should say East Vale, right? So East Vale and Pat Kirsch got mixed together somehow in the conversion onto this thing. But this is the pastor of St. Oscar Romero, Father Pat. And you want to introduce yourself? You can speak into that.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'm the pastor of St. Oscar Romero for the past 5 years. It was founded 5 years ago by Bishop Barnes, and I'm a priest from the Diocese of San Bernardino, and I'll be a priest for 40 years this coming May. And so I'm delighted to be here today to assist you in your planning.
Fantastic. All right. So Regnum Legacy is my law firm that I started to fill a gap in the estate planning market because as a litigator for a number of years, I was litigating over failed estate plans, and I could see holes in the estate planning process that led to a necessary conflict with families and a necessary conflict really with the courts, which causes additional expense and heartache and all sorts of nasty things. So I've developed a system, a new way of thinking about estate planning and a new way of thinking about how we can communicate your legacy to those that you love. Acquisition International, in fact, just named us the most innovative estate planning law firm of 2020. And the group Lawyers of Distinction, if I'll just move this over to the side, or shrink me down anyway, Lawyers of Distinction honored us with an award for excellence in estate planning law. And so if you'll indulge me for just a little bit, I want to play for you a video that kind of explains what Regnum Legacy is, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation. We'll stop talking about us and we'll talk about you guys for a little bit. So let's enjoy. Family, being a father, fundamentally changes how I view the world and how the world views me. And I think that's why family is so important, because that relational aspect between you and other people is fundamentally changed, in my view, for the better.
For us, legacy is not just about what you have, it's about who you love and what you love. Ultimately, the goal for my firm is to make sure that the plans that we're creating for our families are plans that are both going to work and keep their families out of conflict. You can plan for life, but you can't plan for the unexpected. And that's why having an estate plan and engaging in estate planning is necessary.
For us, family is everything. Family is central to who we are. For our children, I think it's very important that they have that opportunity to build a future for themselves. Nobody can guarantee tomorrow. Nobody knows. And so I think it's good to be ready, to be prepared. And this is a big part of the estate planning. We have just felt so much better since making the decision and moving forward with the planning. You've got somebody who's a professional. This is what they do. I mean, when you're sick, you go to the doctor. And when you're preparing some type of estate plan like this, you go to an attorney. You go to somebody who knows. James understands families. I think he also understands taking care of one another. I think that's very important. I think that's all part of this process, is that we take care of one another, and that's what families do. And James knows that. He gets it here. And he's a very sharp guy here, so that combination will take you where you need to go.
Ultimately, my firm's main goal is to make sure that families are protected. Every family who comes in is getting not only the estate plan that they need, but is getting the life and the peace of mind that they want. At Regnum Legacy, our promise to our clients is that you're going to get not only the best legal service and the best legal minds working for you, but you're going to get lawyers who understand you, who understand the importance of family, the value of family, and who are going to do everything to serve you first. We're not here for a transaction. We're here to be your family lawyer.
All right. So that was a little bit about me, a little bit about my firm. You got to see my family and my wonderful kids, which kind of motivated this move into rethinking about how I engage in the estate planning process. And so we're going to continue on here with our presentation, and we're going to talk about two ways to kind of think about estate planning. And the first way is planning for death, which is probably how 80% or so of estate planners plan for their estates and do the estates for their clients. And I know because for about 8 years or so, this is how I engaged in the estate planning process. And here's one of the problems after doing litigation and kind of figuring out what are the commonalities in failed estate plans. And here they are. When you're planning for death, the attorney is looking at, here's your estate, here's what you have, and how can we get all of that to your family after you die? It's all sort of a one-time transaction, it's form-based, and you get a stack of documents, similar to what you would get on LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer or anything that you could type out yourself. Those plans might help you avoid probate. If you've gone to an attorney, almost 100% I can guarantee you that if you walked out of that attorney's office with the document signed and it was funded, if the attorney included funding in his pricing and you died, it would avoid probate. But as the years pass, things happen in your estate and the law changes, and since there's no follow-up, it might not help you avoid probate, because I've been in those situations too where I have to probate a family's estate and there were some problems because there was a lack of follow-up. The estate planning might help you avoid probate taxes, but not necessarily. The important one is that it leaves your heirs unprotected. And I've got a couple of stories that I usually tell in the longer estate planning seminar about what that actually means. But there is if you're a fan of Forensic Files, there's this episode with Christine Paolilla, I think it's season 1, episode 1. Her family basically gave her an inheritance. It was unprotected, meaning she got the entire thing at 18. And unfortunately, over the next 9 months, she used it to inject her veins with heroin. And when the money ran out, she committed a quintuple homicide, which is what the episode of Forensic Files was about. But what got me thinking about that was all of that could have been avoided had they engaged in a little bit smarter planning where they could have protected not only the assets from her own bad choices, but her creditors and bankruptcies and things like that. And the other thing that's key for me is there's no ongoing legal guidance, which is a problem. There's a potential loss for your assets to the State Department of Unclaimed Property, which, as we sit here today, has $9 billion of assets in there. $9 billion. And the reason is because families just don't know what you have when you pass. They might know about a house and they might know about what you have because of statements that come in the mail. But increasingly what I'm seeing is that as you opt for online statements, often your family doesn't have access to your email or digital assets because those digital assets aren't being planned for. And so there's a better way to do it. And there's a better way to kind of think about estate planning. And so here's the other way. And this is kind of, after I had my kids, this is what sort of motivated me. And I'm going to put this there. There, and you're going to watch the dancing Father Pat and James for the rest of the show. And the way I like to look at estate planning is sort of a planning for life, which is a different kind of experience because what I focus on is helping you make informed and empowered decisions. I tell you what the law says, I tell you what would happen in different circumstances, and then you decide what's best for your family. It's not form-based, although you get documents, but what it is strategic based on your own family's needs and what you want to happen with your family. It saves your family thousands of dollars because you're going to avoid probate, you're going to avoid unnecessary sort of documents that you might need or don't need, and they're going to be done right the first time. Importantly, your assets aren't going to be lost upon death to the Department of Unclaimed Property because every client I work with, we catalog their assets. We have them all down so that family members know exactly what they have and exactly what to do when a loved one passes. We engage, we build in sort of asset protection features into our plans and have features that protect children, for example, in the estate of Christine Paolilla, not the estate of her father. If they were, if we were drafting that plan, there would have been protections and safeguards in place so that she would have received that money in a more responsible way. And importantly, it's going to keep your family out of court and out of conflict, and it's going to work when your family needs it. And the reason is because we're not, when I'm thinking about estate planning right now, I'm not thinking about the moment of your death. I'm thinking about your life right now. And again, the change was motivated by my kids because I started thinking about my own estate, and I started realizing that the things that were important to me weren't necessarily property. The things that were important to me was living a good life and the life I was living. And how can we communicate that and how can we build that into the estate planning process? And just because it's sort of fresh on top of mind, you look at the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Now, you might not have agreed with her, maybe her legal opinions or political stances, but you can't deny that her life, the legacy she left behind, is just phenomenal. I mean, the type of legacy she had was really inspiring. And nobody is talking about her money or her assets or her estate, because what's really important about a legacy is the life you've lived, not the money you have on your death. And so we try to find ways to do that for you. And that's particularly important for Catholics because we understand that there's a hereafter, right? This part, our time on earth, is a pilgrimage to our Father's kingdom in heaven. And so as we're preparing for not only our death, we're preparing to live a good, holy, and saintly life, and hopefully find a way to pass that legacy to our children and to our neighbors. All right. So those are the two kinds of ways to think about estate planning, and that's kind of frame our discussion about what the church is teaching. Because incidentally, I'm writing a book on estate planning for Catholics, and so a lot of this information has come from the research for that book. And we'll get into the first one, which is obligations to family. And I promised the dancing Father Pat and James, so let's go here now. Oh, there now. There we go. It looks like Joseph and Mary are looking after us. That's beautiful. Okay, obligations to family. Pope Leo XIII wrote an encyclical called Rerum Novarum. And an encyclical is a document written by a pope that is the sort of highest teaching authority that a pope can give. He can write, exhortations, he can write bulls. I don't even know if popes write papal bulls anymore, but they need to bring those back because those are kind of cool. But an encyclical is the highest teaching document that a pope writes. And Pope Leo wrote this document called Rerum Novarum over 100 years ago. I think it's 130 years ago now. In fact, John Paul II wrote a follow-up called Centesimus Annus, which is 100 years. It marks the 100-year anniversary of Rerum Novarum. But this is what Pope Leo wrote. Nature dictates that man's children, and when you see man's children, we really mean like a family's children. 130 years ago, women weren't really working, so he uses the term man and fathers. Read into it, mothers or parents or whatever. But nature dictates that man's children, who carry on as it were and continue his own personality, should be provided by him with all that is needed, with all that is needful to enable them to honorably keep themselves from want and misery in the uncertainties of this mortal life. Now, in no other way can a father effect this except by the ownership of profitable property, which he can transmit to his children by inheritance. So, in this encyclical Rerum Novarum, Pope Leo is highlighting, is underscoring the family's obligation to care for their children. And what does that mean? That doesn't mean that you've got to, basically make your kids trust fund babies. But what he's saying is that you have an obligation as parents to make sure that your children have what is needed to enable them to honorably keep themselves from want and misery. Basically, to make sure that they're not going to be destitute. But you're not obligated to do any more. You don't have to make them rich beyond their wildest dreams. But the first obligation that you have as a Catholic is to your family. It's to your family, which you can only affect, as Pope Leo writes, through inheritance, the ownership of property, your home and your bank accounts and your 401ks and your life insurance and whatever else. And the first obligation would be to say, okay, how can we create something that is going to help our children become productive members of society and keep them from unnecessary want? That's the first obligation that the church kind of envisions for our planning as we go on. The next part is if you have enough to make sure that your children are not going to want for the necessities of life and there's money left over, the church is encouraging us to think about responsible stewardship. And this again comes from Rerum Novarum at paragraph 19. That's what the 19 means. And Pope Leo writes, whoever has received from the divine bounty a large share of blessings, whether they be external and corporal or gifts of the mind, has received them for the purpose, that's to say for, not fro, the purpose of using them for perfecting his own nature, and at the same time that he may employ as the minister of God's providence for the benefit of others. Wow, there are typos in here. I apologize for that. Father Pat wrote all these slides. I can't. Pope Leo, what he's saying here is that we all have gifts, we all have blessings, and they might be money and they might be, property, or they might be gifts of the mind like intellect or art or artistry. And first we have an obligation to use those for our family, but then the next thing we look to is they come ultimately from God's providence, and they're ultimately for the good and benefit of others, right? If you're an artist and you're a painter, that's not to be, kept in the dark. The public needs to see that. And if you're, for my vocation as a lawyer, I have a gift of intellect and to make things simple. And so if I'm not sharing that with my community through webinars and instructional things, I'm not using those gifts appropriately. In the estate planning context, then, we look at this and say, okay, if your family's taken care of, is there someone else that needs to be taken care of? Maybe your neighborhood, your neighbors, your friends, your church, etc. And it doesn't have to be like leave your neighbor, $10,000. But what you ought to be thinking about is how are you using your estate to care for others once the obligations to family are met? Here's a quote from John Paul II, and he's building on this theme. And this is from his encyclical, Solicitudo Rei Socialis. I think that's how you say it. Is that how you say it? He says yes. Okay, good. The goods of this world are originally meant for all. The right to private property is valid and necessary, but it does not nullify the value of this principle. Private property, in fact, is under a social mortgage. I love that term, social mortgage, which means it has an intrinsically social function based upon and justified precisely by the principle of the universal destination of goods. Now, what the church means there in universal destination of goods is ultimately all goods, all material things belong to God the Father. The destination of this material world is to the Father who created them. And so John Paul II and what the church wants to call our mind to is that our goods, our wealth, our intellect, everything is originally meant to be for the good of all. And this isn't sort of like, everyone's obligated to, immediately sell their home and divide it up. But once the initial obligations are met, you've got your food, you've got your clothing, you've got enough to care for your family. Over and above that becomes essentially excess. And so we're obligated then to say, at that point, to say, okay, how can we use this, whatever it might be, for the good of all? So that, I like that word social mortgage, in the sense that God is essentially, if you want to think of him as a lender, he's loaning us these things so we can use them for the good of society. All right, we're going to still stick with responsible stewardship, because this is the encyclical Centesimus Annus that I was just referencing. And I like this quote from John Paul. He says, "The possession of material goods is not an absolute right. The use of goods, while marked by freedom, is subordinated to their original common destination as created goods." All right, and so in the estate planning context, what I like to do with Catholics and what we should be thinking about as Catholics is what sort of attitudes do we have about our own material possessions? The ultimate end of those material possessions is going to be to God the Father. Our soul goes back to the Father, and material goods either rot in the ground and become part of creation itself, or are utilized by other creatures, our family and friends and neighbors, etc. But what is our attitude? And oftentimes, as a lawyer, I see where this comes into play is a client might look and say, you know what, I just don't like my kids, I'm cutting them out. And the moral choice there might be, okay, is there a way we can heal that rift in the family? And is cutting them out going to actually create a void, or a deeper void where it creates unnecessary conflict? So can we care for the children and then at some point find a way to care for our neighbors in a way that is good for philanthropy? We can give money to the church or to our local arts institute or whatever we want to do. But how can we utilize, and how is our attitude framed when we're doing the estate planning process? Because that's going to really inform some of the moral choices we make when we're engaging in estate planning. And we'll get to some of those in the next slide, I think. This is more responsible stewardship. That's Gregory the Great. I'll read it. He that hath a talent, let him see that he hide it not. He has a way with words, that Gregory the Great. He that hath abundance, let him quicken himself to mercy and generosity. He that hath art and skill, let him do his best to share the use and utility hereof with his neighbor. Again, the important point here, and the thing that I like to incorporate with estate planning, is that when we have something, it's important to think about how we're using that for the common good of all. All right. And that kind of, the next thing flows from that is, how do we create a moral legacy? Because our attitudes about our own property will inform our own sort of attitudes about our faith and our beliefs and how we act and how we even treat our neighbor here in life. And how we treat our neighbor here in life, as we talked about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and you can think of others, think of the saints, the legacies they've left behind. And most of them, like St. Francis, had absolutely no property at all. But their legacy persists even to this day, and it's because of the life they live. It's their attitudes towards property and towards their neighbor. So once we have our obligations to family and our obligations to our neighbor right, okay, we're treating our family right and we're caring for our neighbor in ways that that help the common good, we start building a legacy. At that point, we're talking about a legacy that can get passed on for future generations. And if I asked everyone here, and I ask this of almost all of my estate planning clients, at least now that I've kind of rethought about how to do estate planning, if you could leave one of the following to your kids, what would it be? You could leave your money, or you could leave your faith, values, experience, and beliefs. And you have to pick one. What would it be? Now, hands down, every client I've met with always says, I'd rather leave my faith, values, and experience and beliefs. And this isn't necessarily unique to believers. You know, atheists have this belief too, and you know, it's Christians, non-Christians, believers, non-believers, all have some sort of philosophy, some sort of guiding principle about their life that they want their loved ones to inherit, that they would want their loved ones to believe. And as Catholics, I know as a father, I want to be able to pass my faith to my kids. I don't care that they have money. I care that their soul is saved. I care that they get confirmed and that they're going to receive their Holy Communion and that they're going to be baptized right, that they're raised right with the church. That's what I care about as a father, and I suspect you're in the same boat. And so at Regnum Legacy, what we do is we we have a whole questionnaire and a whole system to capture what your moral legacy is. And we leave it, either we do it usually in written form, like a little mini book that kind of goes over your whole life and what you believe and all that, or we can do it in video form where you have a crew go out and video and have like a keepsake video for your family after you pass, which is intended to sort of be a lasting memory of what your legacy is, what your beliefs are. And John Paul II, actually, if you can Google right now, if you Google John Paul II will, or John Paul II, his will, the first two paragraphs of his will are what you would consider a typical will. I leave all my property or my personal papers to Stanislaw Dziewicz, his personal assistant, for a number of years, and he, gives his body to the hands of the College of Cardinals, and they can bury him wherever he wants. And that's about the first two paragraphs. And then the next pages are personal reflections about his own faith and his own beliefs. And it appears, if you read the will, that every year he would go on do spiritual exercises, and when he would think about his own death, he would write a personal sort of memo that he would create as an amendment to his will, and there are his own thoughts and reflections about his life after he passes on. And so we try to kind of recreate that in our legacy planning, so that your family can know exactly what you believed, why you believed it, and hopefully keep that as a lasting memory of who you are. And that's important for every family, because ultimately our goals as disciples and Catholics is to spread our faith and to, carry out Jesus' mission here on earth. And as Father Pat would say, to make Jesus Christ more known and more loved. Do you agree with that? Thumbs
Absolutely.
up. Give me a thumbs up. See, got Father Pat's seal of approval here. All right. This is the other circumstance that we need to talk about with regard to church teaching, and it's regard to your healthcare directive, because in an estate plan or Catholic estate plan, every estate plan is going to have a healthcare directive. But a Catholic estate plan is particularly important because you want to avoid a circumstance where the courts are going to have to guess about what you want. This is Terry Schiavo. You guys might remember this case if you're older than 35. This case was going on, I think, when I was late in high school or early in college. And Terry Schiavo was a devout Catholic. I think she was in an accident off her horse, and she became brain dead. Not brain dead, but she had severe brain damage. She wasn't a vegetable. She could breathe on her own. She could move. She could do things. She could communicate in a rudimentary fashion, but she couldn't feed herself. Well, her husband at the time started dating someone and wanted to get married. And he couldn't get married because his wife, Terry, was still alive. So he told the court, stop feeding her. And the court essentially listened to him. Her family intervened and said, wait, court, we're devout Catholics. This goes against Catholic Church teaching. This is not something Terry would have ever wanted. Unfortunately, Terry never wrote down any directive that included what her faith was, what her beliefs were, or what she wanted. So the law only could rely on what the spouse wanted, because that's what the law says. If you don't have a directive, the law is going to listen to what your spouse wants. And so, of course, the judge ordered that her feeding tube be removed, and they actually stationed a guard in her room to make sure that nobody would give her food and water. Father Frank Pavone, one of the priests for life, he wanted to give her just a little tiny morsel of communion before she died, and the police said that he would be arrested if he put just one little speck of bread on her tongue or a drop of wine on her lips. And ironically, there were flowers that people were sending, and so there was vases and flowers, and so people would come to water the flowers every day, but no one was allowed to give Terry any water. And so it took her about a week to die, then she died, and she went to her eternal reward, presumably. But this kind of situation could be avoided if Terry had a clear directive that expressed exactly what she believed, exactly what her Catholic faith taught, so that the judge could follow it. Because at the end of the day, the judge isn't a theologian. He's not going to follow your religion unless you tell him to. And the only way to tell him to is in a healthcare directive. So what is the religion? What does the Catholic Church teach about that kind of thing? We all know that, or you might know, that euthanasia is improper, right? You might have heard, hey, we don't do euthanasia. Well, here's what euthanasia is so that we can get a definition. It's understood to be an action or omission which in and of itself causes death with the purpose of eliminating suffering. That's from Evangelium Vitae, paragraph 65. That's what we're talking about, euthanasia. And that's the kind of thing that essentially happened to Terry Schiavo, although I don't know if you would technically call that euthanasia. But here's what euthanasia isn't, okay? So some people get confused. Euthanasia is not refusing aggressive medical treatment. In other words, if there are medical procedures which no longer correspond to the reality of the situation of the patient, either because they're disproportionate to the expected results or because they impose an excessive burden on the family, then those types of treatments can be withdrawn. And that's not what euthanasia is. So if you're a Catholic and you're sitting and you're wondering, oh, you know, I need to be kept alive at all costs because the church doesn't allow me to, to withdraw life treatment, that's not what the church teaches. Instead, here's the test, really. You have a moral obligation to care for yourself and allow yourself to be cared for. This is, again, from Evangelium Vitae. This is Pope John Paul II. But the duty has to take account of your concrete circumstances. Where are you at with your medical treatment, and is any treatment likely to be beneficial or not? It needs to be determined whether the means of the treatment available are objectively proportionate to the prospects for improvement. And then here's the key part. To forego extraordinary or disproportionate means is not the equivalent of euthanasia or suicide. That's the test. So if you're wondering, if you have a healthcare directive right now and you're wondering, is my healthcare directive consistent with church teaching? You have to ask if the instruction is going to forego, or if the instruction foregoes extraordinary or disproportionate means, it's fine. But if the instruction foregoes ordinary means of preserving life, stuff that's ordinary, in Terry Schiavo's case, food and water are ordinary means of preserving life. Ordinary. That just means that's the type of thing that everybody needs to preserve their own life, and without it, you die. If you withdraw the ordinary means of preserving life, that is where the church says that's a moral wrong. That is something that's not okay. Anything that's extraordinary or disproportionate is okay to withdraw. So when you're looking at your healthcare directive, and this is important because of the estate planning documents you use, this is going to be one of the last ones that gets used while you're alive. This is what's going to determine whether you die or not die, or whether you're going to get resuscitated, or what your wishes are. So that's the test you want to look for in terms of a moral and ethical estate plan from the healthcare director portion. I'm going to turn it over to Father Pat to add to what I've said already, and to talk to you about Catholic funerals and any other wonderful jokes he wants to tell and beautiful things he wants to say. So that's the last part of the presentation for me, and then next is going to be Father Pat, who you probably all paid to see anyway. This is why you bought the ticket, is Father Pat. So here you go. Just stick on your ear if you want.
Modern technology.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that the hardest thing that we have to do to say goodbye to someone we love is the hardest thing. And really, the deeper the love, the deeper the pain. And so, as James was talking about preparing for our own death and for those around us, I think it's important that we take that time to really reflect upon it. So, as Catholic priests, we're mandated by church law to have our funerals planned out. And so we have to have the music and the readings and who's going to preach and preside at the funeral if it's not the bishop. And then also where we're going to be buried. Now I'm from Pennsylvania, so we have a joke going with the bishop, because he said to me one day, he's "Now, Pat, are you going to be buried in Pennsylvania, or are you going to be buried here in California?" And I said, "Well, Bishop, my family already has a plot in Pennsylvania." Well, he said, "Okay, we can send you back to Pennsylvania, but be aware that we'll be sending you COD." I said, "Thank you, Bishop." And so it's important that we really reflect upon that, because this is really a gift that you give to yourself. I remember a few years ago, my own mother died. I was a basket case. And I remember going to the funeral home and going to the next room, and I was crying, and I was so upset. And I said, I had to stop crying. I said, people would think that I don't have any faith. They would think that I don't believe in God, I believe in eternal life. And then I was reflecting upon Jesus, and I said, Jesus cried when Lazarus died. In fact, it said he was moved with the deepest of emotions. And so I thought, well, if he can cry, I can cry. And because that's the reality, is that yes, we have great faith in God. We believe that we have an eternal life, but we also are human beings. And so the heart is broken. There's a strange thing about the human heart. When it's broken, it still keeps on ticking. Anything else, these microphones, they break, they don't work, but the heart still keeps on ticking. And so this came real to me when I went with a family whose son had died of cancer, and he was 12 years old. It was devastating for them. But they went to the mortuary, and they were just completely beside themselves, and they asked me to go with. And they were just bombarded with all these questions of, caskets and the funerals. And of course, the dollar signs were adding up and up, and it became more difficult for them. And so I thought if they had planned beforehand and had all this laid out beforehand, it would have been really a gift to give to themselves. Because I remember, as I said, my own mother died. I remember that Father Michael had come to the funeral, and one of the priests, and he was a friend of mine, and he had to help me through the funeral, because it was like I had hundreds and hundreds of funerals, but doing the funeral that day for my mother was like, I kept on saying to him, what do I do next? And it was like half my body, my mind had shut down. And I think that's really what happens, so we can't think clearly. So it's really a gift that you can give to your family, and give to your loved ones, is to have this all planned out so that it's there. And so we have a book the Catholic Church has put together. It's called Through Death to Life. And so it helps the family plan. It has all the readings, and it has a beautiful understanding of the Christian death. Because actually, in our society today, we think only about living, and we never think about dying. And so people think that we're born, we live, and we die. But as Catholics, as Christians, we believe that we live, we die, but we rise to a new life, which is eternal life. And so to think about that, so when you're having eulogies, which speaks about the person's life within the funeral, we also say, okay, well, are we going to reflect upon the really legacy that they're leaving, a legacy of love, and also where are they going? And because sometimes we put all our eggs in one basket, and it's in this life, and we don't think about the next life. And so that's so important. And so these are available at the church, and and so we now offer seminars, and that's why James asked me to come today, because there's so many questions. And when you start asking these questions at the time of someone's death, you can't think clearly. But if you sit down and say, okay, I know that my mother's going to pass away, I know my father's going to pass away, and so can I plan the funeral? Absolutely. And so you can give thought to the readings, so that the readings really reflect the person's life and how they live their life and the legacy that they're going to leave. And then there's questions about, well, can you be cremated? It's interesting because when we're children, we're taught the Catholic faith. Sometimes that's all we know is what we learn when we were children. And so people now think that you can't be cremated. And so there was a time in the Catholic Church when you couldn't be cremated. It was against the Church's teaching. But then they changed that teaching, and now they're saying that, yes, it's possible. So right after they changed it from no to yes, you still had to get permission from the bishop to be cremated. And then, but then now the permission is there. And but then there's guidelines with that, so that the remains, we say that it should be placed in the earth or in a resting place, not to be put on a mantle at home. And a few years ago, someone came and they had the ashes put in lockets, and they wanted me to bless the lockets. So I said, no, I really can't, because those need to go in the ground, because we have to treat that with respect, because that was the body that held the soul. And so then when we see that and put it in this resting place, then those places become places of hope, because they remind us when we go to pray there that this is not the end, but it's the beginning of a new life with God forever. And so sometimes people think, how depressing it is. I remember one time I had a funeral for a young boy and a young man who died suddenly in a car accident, and I was just so overwhelmed with his grief. And then it's like, I even forgot, I said, wake up, Father, there's eternal life. He's sharing in that life. And so then I began to think about the new life he had, and that will one day share with him. And so you can be cremated. Now for priests, we have to have a funeral where our body is present, and then afterwards we can be cremated, but the body has to be present for the funeral. That isn't the case with a layperson. They can be cremated, but yet at certain times, like the cremations, because they're so backlogged at times, it takes 2 or 3 weeks, and so sometimes it prolongs the funeral. But the thing is, you want to have all this planned out, to think what's best for me, and then really to reflect upon what is this time in which we're going to remember the person's life and to celebrate it. And so then to come together as a family and to sit down and to say, okay, how do we want to live this out so that it's a true celebration? Yes, our hearts are broken, but how can we really celebrate this person's life and remember? And that takes thought. So we really have to give some thought and really say, what is this person? And so even for ourselves, as James mentioned with Pope John Paul II, he did that. And we're called to do the same thing. So that when we're young, we think about what we're going to do when we grow up, and when we're middle-aged, we think about, the next stage. But when we get to an older age, where I'm getting there, is to begin to look at my life and say, what difference did I make in this life? What contributions did I make? And what legacy do I want to leave? Because I don't have a great deal of money, so I won't be leaving a lot of money. But hopefully, what I will have left is a life filled with love for God and love for his people. And so that when the Lord calls me to himself, I'm hoping he's going to say to me, Pat, come on in. I have marvelous things in store for you. And so it's truly a gift. And so we think about that gift that your loved one is given, the gift of eternal life, and how do you carry that on? And so Jesus Christ gives us the answer to that. The night before he died, what he said to his disciples, and he only said one thing to them, he said to them, live on in my love. Live on in my love. And so then for us, as those who are remaining, to look at the person who died and to think about their love and how that love has changed our lives, and then to rededicate ourselves to go out and be sharing that life with that love with one another, so we can make a big difference in the world, and especially in the world in which we live today, which is filled with violence and hate and turmoil and all kinds of confusion. Love has to rule the day. And so both in life and death, we are the Lord's. And so we want to reflect upon the fact that, as James said, we belong to him. And so he brought us into the world. And so in many cases, this isn't my life. I'm a steward of that life, but it belongs to God. So everything that I have is a gift from God. So often you hear people say, well, it's my life, it's my body. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, it isn't. It was given to you by God, and it will be taken back to God. And so we look at life as all precious, from the moment of life to the end of life, and the moment of conception to the end of life. And that throughout this life, we're called to do three things. The first thing is to know God. The second thing is to love him. And the third thing is to serve him in this life and the next. And we serve him in this life and the next by loving him for all eternity. And so this is a very difficult, as I said at the beginning of this, it's the hardest thing that we have to do. But the beauty of it is that we don't have to do it alone. And then when we look at our faith, Jesus reminds us of why he came. You know, St. Teresa of Avila would say, we don't need wings of an angel to fly to our God. Our God comes to us. And so when Jesus came to the earth, it was God's plan that he would walk with us, that he would talk with us, that he would fall and scrape his leg like we would do. So that when we laugh, he laughs. And when we cry, he cries. And so Jesus cries when we lose a loved one because he knows the human heart is broken. And he can understand what we're going through. And so he's there and he's walking with us. Not that he's some distant God far away, but he walks with us during this valley of tears. And so this is a great legacy of love that we want to pass on of our loved ones. And so the church is always willing to help and we can to the people insisting at the time. And a lot of times if it's done beforehand in planning all this, it makes it much easier for when the time arrives.
Yeah. Questions, Ted?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Let me see. All right. We'll keep on here. I'll keep this one. All right. If you guys have any questions, put them in the chat, and we will answer any questions for me or Father Pat. Before we do that, I'm going to quickly we'll put your questions in the chat and start thinking about them. I'm going to move to the next slide here. And we're going to talk about, I've got two gifts for you. And the first is, because you're attending this webinar, let me scoot in, I gotta go this way. Because you're attending this webinar, we're going to give you the family legacy planning session for free. I usually charge clients $750 to do that. And that's because we go over the entire financial plan. And actually it's a 2-hour strategy meeting to actually go over what your estate should look like, what's going to be included in your estate, and every possible iteration of the plans. There's only really 3, you know, the state's plan, a will plan, or a trust plan, but you'll learn that a little bit later. And we usually charge $750, or if you already have a trust or a will, $950, we'll give that to you for free. The second thing is we'll give you $750 off of whatever trust or estate plan you want to do with us, with not us, but with me, so that you can get this process rolling. And I like this book that Father Pat had, and I'll give you a little, there's this. I'm actually going to buy these so that when I do estate planning for Catholics, each client gets a copy so that they're able to more fruitfully plan their funeral. Because my estate plans already have a funeral instruction. It's about a 12-page funeral instruction. But something like the book that Father Pat has would actually have the readings and all that. So if you'd like to do that, you can book an appointment. I'm going to put a little offer on the thing now. There's no, the link that you should see on your screen coming up now or in a few minutes is going to, it just says schedule now. It's a direct link to my calendar, and you can schedule the planning meeting with me. And if you want to engage in estate planning after that, I'll give you $750 off. Okay, now that that's over, are there any questions that you guys have for me or Father Pat? That's sort of the burning questions you've got, in your mind for, hold on, let me turn off this, for how to plan your estate or what to do with your estate? Put them down in the chat. One of the questions I frequently get as an attorney is, can't I just transfer everything with a deed, right? Someone will redo their deeds and they'll put their deeds, their children, for example, add them to their deeds. That's a really ineffective way to go about your estate planning strategy. And the reason is because as soon as, from a legal perspective, as soon as your kids are on that deed, their creditors, their judgments or a divorcing spouse can take your property. And so that would be a bad idea. And I get that question all the time. Well, I don't need an estate plan. I can just transfer the deed. You can transfer the deed to avoid probate, but it's not going to help you with the actual planning of the estate. Okay. All right, this says, is this session virtual or in person? The planning session can be both virtual or in person. So you can meet me in my office just like this, and we're socially distanced, or we could do it through Zoom. So it's your call. You just tell me where you want to go, or I've even gone to clients' homes, but that's, you call it, whatever you want to do. Thank you, Mary. Any other questions? Any comments from you, Father?
Yeah, just I think that which one here?
Yeah, why not?
That really to give it a serious thought, because when this does happen, it's just your whole life is turned upside down. In fact, this afternoon I'm going to a family where the man died of COVID. And it was totally unexpected, of course, and he died so quickly. And so to walk with these people, of course, this came out of the blue, and so to know that the church is there and that we want to help in every way we can to make this moment, as you walk through these valley of tears, make it in as peaceful as possible.
Yeah. Another common question that I get a lot is about the difference between a will and a trust, or a living will and a living trust. And so, some people are just shy about asking the question. So I've heard them all, so I'll just tell you the common ones because you're probably thinking it. So a will and a trust, a will is not going to help you avoid probate. We didn't go over what probate is, but probate is the process after you die. If you don't have a trust, the court gets to decide where everything goes. If you have a will, you tell the court where you want everything to go. And so the judge gets to look at your will and say, is it valid? And if it is, the judge will follow whatever instructions you've got. But it's a court process. If you've died without a will or a trust, again, it's a court process, and the court will decide where your property goes. Incidentally, the fun part is if you go down the line of where all your property goes without a will or a trust, there's a chance that your mother-in-law or brother-in-law or sister-in-law or father-in-law could get your property. So if that's not a situation you want to be happening, you want to have at least a will. But even if you have a will, the probate fees for the average probate fee for a person in California is $22,000. And the reason is because it's based on your gross value of the estate. So if you own a home in California, it's likely your home is worth upwards of $400,000. That doesn't mean that you can sell it and take $400,000. That just means that's what you could sell it for. You could be upside down on it, and the probate court doesn't care. They base everything just on the gross value, and then it's a percentage of that. And so the average fee in California is about $22,000. For East Vale, it's the average fee is $30,000. In Chino Hills, I think the average fee is $35,000. Only way to avoid that is with a trust. Henry says, if you're giving this away, how can you stay in business? That's a good question. That's what my wife asks me all the time. James, stop giving all this stuff away. No, Henry, actually, so the estate plans that we craft for our clients range between $2,000 and $8,000. So I'm not promising to do your estate planning for free, but I'll give you $750 off and we'll meet for free. But we do make some money on these kinds of estate plans. How can we get back to you within the week? You know what you can do if you want a week to think about it, Elizabeth, what you can do is email me. Let me give you my email here. Start the presentation. There we go. So here's my email at the bottom there. You'll see jlong@regnumlegacy.com. So Elizabeth or anybody else listening, go ahead and send me an email and just remind me that you were on this webinar, and I'll just apply the offer to you, because for some of you, you're going to need time to talk to your spouse, or you want to think about it, or call the estate planner down the street, and I get that. So if you're on this webinar today, go ahead and take advantage of that offer. Send me an email and just let me know you're interested, and then whenever we can schedule that meeting, we can schedule it. I hope that answers your question, Elizabeth. Henry, did that answer your question? I'm going to assume so. The other thing that you should know about that, just because I know it's probably on the tips of your tongues, how much is this going to cost me? Again, we charge between $2,000 and $8,000. It depends on how complex you want your estate and how much work you want me to do. For example, if you want me to take over funding the entire trust and redoing your bank accounts and all this stuff, thank you, Henry. And doing all of that stuff, it's a little more expensive. And if you want complicated asset protection stuff in your trust, it gets a little more expensive. But we also have payment plans, so we can do 0% financing for 12 months, or you can finance it over 60 months through a vendor that we have, and the interest rate would be dependent on your credit score and all that. The idea is that we're trying to make it as easy as possible for families to do this, because it can be an investment, but it's essential if you want to avoid probate and the fees associated with that, and find a way to leave your legacy to your family, to engage with an attorney, either like myself or some other attorney who knows what they're doing, so that you're sure that your plan works for your family when they need it. Any other questions? We've got about 3 minutes. 3 minutes going once. I know you've got them. I know you've got them, because I get it all the time on the phone. There's the question. Let me finish the thought about the living trust versus living will. We talked about the difference between a will and a trust. A lot of people have heard, oh, I've heard about a living will. Can I do a living will? A living will is actually, in a lot of states, you've got a power of attorney for healthcare, which is the person who's in charge of making healthcare decisions for you if you can't. The next thing is what you want to happen, your directive, and that's the living will part. In California, we have the law has what's called an advanced healthcare directive, which combines the two. So it's the living will and the power of attorney for healthcare. So it combines your directive with who you want to be making the decisions. So, and then a living trust is, of course, the vehicle that transfers your property. And then Mary asks, is this mainly for people who are really rich? That is an excellent question, because it's another one I get most of the time. And if you hadn't asked it, Mary, I would have asked it myself, because that's another one. No, it's mainly for, let me say, it's mainly for anybody in California who has children and who owns a home. Because if you own a home and you have children, well, even if you don't have children, but mainly if you have children, you care about this kind of thing. But if you own a home, after you die, your family is going to have to pay between $20,000 and $40,000 to distribute your property. The only way to avoid that is to take time now to get an estate plan in place. And so the real question is, obviously, if you're really rich, you need to do advanced estate planning, maybe for tax purposes and things like that. But if you're not rich, the concern that you have is, do I want to pay a little bit now to get my estate plan in order, or do I want my kids to pay a lot, $30,000, $40,000 after I'm gone, just to get my estate? And and I'll just leave you with this thought because it was an estate that I probated a couple of 3 years ago now. The mom had died. The only thing she owned was a house. It was the family house. She raised her kids in it. Her husband had died, and then she got cancer and she died pretty quickly. But she was able to make a will. Her only wish in the will was that the home be given to her 4 kids, so that the kids can have this sort of family house preserved, because that's where they all grew up. And her idea was that this would be the place where everybody would go and gather for Christmas and things like that. What happened was the will had to go through probate, and the fees from the court, the probate fees were, I think in that estate was $21,500. And the kids, who were all either one was graduating high school and one was graduating college, they were all like between 18 and 23. None of them had the $20,000, so the only way they could pay that was to sell the house and get the money, pay the fees, and then they just divided up the money. And so it was kind of sad for them because they wanted to keep the house, they just couldn't afford the probate fee. And then Mary follows up with, if you've made a trust and will in the past, can a session evaluate it? Yes. So Mary, usually, again, I should have put this on the slide. I usually charge $950 to do the review of the prior trust, but I'll review that for free. All I ask is you send it to me, so you could book your meeting. And when you book it, just say you already have a will or a trust and you need it reviewed. I've got a 50-point inspection, kind of like when you go to the car dealership and you get your vehicle inspected. I've got a 50-point inspection for an existing trust to go over exactly, like, does it include this? Do you want that? And then, you walk out with either a clean bill of health, hey, your trust is perfect, you don't need anything, or here's some suggestions where you might want to make some changes or an amendment of your trust. So I'd encourage you, Mary, if you've already got a trust, schedule your appointment with me. And at the very least, you're not going to be hiring me if you've already got it. And if you got a clean bill of health, you're going to walk away with at least, hey, I know for certain that whatever I did before is still good. And if we need to make a change, we can make a change. And that's not a problem either. So any other questions? Don't be shy. If you do have a question, by the way, that maybe you're a little bit uncomfortable asking because maybe there's specific facts that you need to tell me, my email's there. Email me. I'd be happy to email you a response. So I don't want you to feel obligated to disclose private information or anything up here. But if there's no other questions, I'll say goodbye, and Father Pat would say goodbye. Father, do you want to lead us in a blessing before we go? Here's the thing.
Father, thank you for all your gifts, and thank you for the gift of life and love. And we ask for your continued blessings upon all of us as we continue to live out our lives in your love. I ask you to send your blessings upon all who are in need of your love today, and on those dealing today. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you guys so much for your attention. Again, any other questions you have, shoot me an email, or you can give me a phone call too. My phone number is there. It's also a text line. That's my business line, but I've got an integration with my cell phone, so any text to that line go automatically to my cell phone. So text me or call me or email me, and I'd be happy to answer anything. And if you'd like to review your existing trust or go over what plan you should have, schedule a meeting with me or email me, and we'll get that deal to you. All right. Well, guys, God bless. Thanks so much for your attention and hanging out with us today. And I'll see you soon in my office. Take care.